Hi, good morning. This is Sean Kelly with DGI Training. Thanks for attending our annual DGI Tech Control live presentation. We're going to offer you a short synopsis on some of the changes that are affecting both IATA, the IMDG Regulations, and 49 CFR. I say some of the changes, there's always quite a few of them, and across the three regulations and the thousands of different UN numbers and proper shipping names, there's no way we can cover them all. But we've done a good job of listing them, and we'll go through them one by one. We'll start with 49 CFR, get into the IMDG code, and then the IATA regulations. A lot of the changes are across the board and are in all three regulations. During the webinar, your lines are going to be muted to cut down on background noise. And if you do have a question, you can send me a question via the control panel on the right side of your screen, like a text message. If the message applies, question applies, then I'll read it out loud and respond out loud. If not, I may ask you to submit an email to me after the webinar takes place. At the completion of the webinar, you guys will receive a certificate of attendance. This is by no means a certificate for recurrent training. Your recurrent training is still in effect. And of course, if by 49 CFR or the IMDG code, that recurrent training is required every 3 years. And for IATA, it's required every 2 years. This is me. I live here in Amelia Island, Florida, which is in the northeast corner of Florida, right on the Florida-Georgia line. It's a beautiful little spot, and I'm real lucky to be here. I've been with DGI for 18 years, and before that, I was in the airline industry for 10 years, and before that, I was a helicopter pilot in the Army for 10 years. So my background definitely lies in aviation, but the 18 years with DGI has certainly given me the experience necessary for transport by ground as well as ocean. Here's a couple recordings, one of them audio, one of them video. I think it's important to see and listen to these recordings. It makes us aware of what we don't know. And those of us that don't know what we don't know often are the most dangerous people. So we work in a dangerous world, and we handle some dangerous materials that can affect a lot of other people around us and even not around us. So let's watch these short videos. They're about 3-4 minutes each, and I'll talk a little bit more about them on the other side.
Critter 592, contact Miami Center on 13245 song. Critter 592, contact Miami Center 13245. 592 is immediate return to Miami. Critter 592, roger, turn left heading 270, descend and maintain 7,000. What kind of problem are you having? Smoke in the cabin. Roger. Critter 592, they're going to be standing by for you. You can plan where you want to when able directed to Dolphin now. Critter 592, turn left heading 140. Critter 592, when able, turn left heading 250, descend and maintain 5,000. 7,000. Waco 49. Waco 49. Yeah, Critter 592 is coming back to Miami. He's got an emergency. Eagle 703 wants 12,000 as a final. Critter 592, keep the turnaround heading 120. 1462, we're past the 2 for 5. American 1462, roger. Critter 592, contact Miami approach on Christians. No, you just keep my frequency. American 960, turn left heading 270, join the Waco transition. Heading 270 to join the Waco transition, American 960. Eagle 703, contact Miami Center now on 13245. Critter 592, you can turn left heading 100, join the runway 12 localizer at Miami. Critter 592, descend and maintain 3,000. Critter 592, Opelok Airport's about 12 o'clock at 15 miles.
Wow, that's a shame. That was the actual ATC recording of a ValueJet flight that took off out of Miami in 1996. And we're going to see what happened right now. This is the NTSB's video reenactment of what happened.
One hour to disaster. A SaberTech driver pulls up at gate G2 at Miami International Airport with ValueJet cargo for flight 592. Inside the boxes are 144 out-of-date oxygen generators loosely packed. A ramp agent places them around a large airplane tire. The pilots are unaware that they have a dangerous load on board. 30 minutes to go. As the plane taxis to the runway, the loose packing and unsecured cargo jolt one of the generators into action. It begins to heat up. 11 minutes to disaster. The plane taxis to its takeoff position. In the hold, the surface of the metal generator gets hotter and hotter. Soon the heat ignites the cardboard box and bubble wrap, and the blaze begins. 10 minutes to disaster. Flight 592 takes off from Miami International. Even though the hold is airtight, the fire is now blazing, sustained by the oxygen produced by the generators. 3.5 minutes to go.
What's that?
The sound heard by the crew is one of the tires in the hold bursting, just as it did in the lab test. Unknown to the pilots, the fire begins to eat away at the systems on board.
We got some kind of electrical problem.
The battery charge is kicking in.
We're losing everything.
The battery charger can't help the stricken jet as the fire is consuming everything in its path, including the control cables that run to the rear of the plane. Captain Kubek begins to lose control of the aircraft. Temperatures in the hold have now reached more than 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. In the cabin, passengers are becoming desperate as they choke on the toxic fumes. Flight attendant Jennifer Stearns rushes into the cockpit, but the pilots refuse to drop the masks, knowing that oxygen would only make the fire worse. 1 minute from disaster. The cabin floor burns and begins to cave in. 7 seconds to disaster. Now, no one is in control of the plane. The crew is probably unconscious, overcome by toxic fumes given off by the aircraft's interior fittings. Seconds later, Flight 592 nosedives into the Florida Everglades at 500 miles per hour.
Sobering, eh? The reason this, I feel it's important, is because these are these chemical oxygen generators. You know, when you go on the airplane and as the plane leaves the gate, the flight attendant says, if we should experience a loss of cabin pressure, a mask will fall down. Pull on the hose and put the mask over your face. When you pull on the hose, you're activating this chemical oxygen generator, which is stored in the ceiling right above your head. And it burns two chemicals together, and the byproduct of these chemicals burning is they create oxygen. So normally at 30,000 feet, you're not going to have a fire because you need oxygen to have a fire. But in this case, these chemical oxygen generators, they were making their own oxygen and therefore able to sustain the fire. Well, what do we have today? Today we have these lithium batteries, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of lithium batteries. And in every cargo compartment today, both on cargo aircraft as well as passenger aircraft, they have fire suppression systems. The fire suppression systems use this argon gas, and they flood the cargo compartment with argon gas, which is heavier than air, and theoretically, all of the oxygen is supposed to be removed from the cargo compartment. Therefore, you cannot have a fire on the plane. Well, guess what? A fire that's initiated by lithium batteries does not go out. It does not get extinguished with this argon gas or the current fire suppression systems that we have on board the aircraft. And that's why the aviation community and now governments alike, including the airlines, are adamant about getting lithium batteries off of airplanes, because they don't have a means to put out the fire, and ultimately it can bring down an airplane, and we don't want that to happen. That's why I think that this video was important. It raises the issue that you may be handling lithium batteries, you may be packaging lithium batteries, but if you don't do it right and they're not marked and labeled, they can end up on a passenger airplane starting a fire, and all because it was done wrong. So if we do it right, then the risk is greatly reduced. So we'll start with 49 CFR. This is the new version, 2016, 49, actually 2015. They're always a year behind, it seems like. But before a law can make it into 49 CFR, it has to go through a process. And that process is, it first becomes a notice of proposed rule. Congress has a diary. The United States Congress has a diary, so to speak, and it's called the Federal Register. Every single day, the Federal Register is published. And in the Federal Register, it discusses what's going down in Congress, or which agency within the federal government is going to discuss certain things or vote on certain things. And so if the DOT, Department of Transportation, wants to make a change to 49 CFR, they have to publish a proposed rule. And they publish this proposed rule in the Federal Register, puts everybody on notice, say, hey, here's a rule we're thinking about. You have, as the general public or industry, you have 30 days to respond. You have 90 days to respond. You have 1 year to respond. So, and at the end of that comment period, then they'll take all of the comments and they'll incorporate them or not into the final rule. And they'll have discussion and they'll go back and forth, and then they'll come up with this final rule. Then the final rule is published in the Federal Register and eventually into the next publication of 49 CFR. So that's how a rule becomes law in 49 CFR. I started with the final rule from 2014 having to do with lithium batteries, and we're still having layover effects or hangover effects, if you will, from this final rule HM 224F that came out the end of 2014. And the biggest portion of it was that they eliminated Special Provision 188. Special Provision 188 was the exceptions for small lithium batteries. What they've done was they've taken all of the exceptions, all of the requirements, exceptions or otherwise, for lithium batteries, and they put them into section 173.185. So we no longer have to go shopping and looking in different areas of 49 CFR when we're shipping the lithium batteries. We go straight to section 173.185. They also made an attempt to standardize the lithium battery requirements with the international standards. And that primarily has to do with 4 cells or 2 batteries installed in equipment in a single package. And these are small cells or small lithium batteries in a single package installed in equipment. And if you fall outside those parameters, then the batteries start to become regulated. You need marks and labels and documentation. There's a telephone number for additional information, must be on both the package and the shipper's declaration. And unless the batteries are contained in equipment, each package must be capable of withstanding a 1.2 meter drop test, and that package may not exceed 30 kilos. You won't find this chart in 49 CFR. We generated this chart based on the information in 49 CFR. What it is, though, or what it illustrates is that here in the United States, by ground only, we have small, medium, and large lithium batteries. Only by ground in the United States do we have small, medium, and large lithium batteries. The rest of the world only has small and large. And for lithium-ion rechargeable batteries, the kind that we find in laptops and cell phones, that cutoff is 100 watt-hours. The first final rule for 2015 was HM 215M, and this too primary function was to standardize all of the requirements for international standards with 49 CFR, and they did a really good job of doing that. In addition, they've reworked the hazardous materials table, adding, modifying, or removing many proper shipping names, hazard class, packing groups, and special provisions. This did become effective this year, January 1st. They also modified the definition of non-bulk packaging. If you don't know, the definition section in 49 CFR is section 171.8, and that now includes bags and boxes. The picture here is what we call super sacks, and these are big nylon bags capable of holding up to 2,000 pounds or 2,000 kilos in some cases. And many of them are designed and tested to UN standards. So a non-bulk package can be up to 400 kilos, 450 liters, or 119 gallons, all in a single package. And if it's less than that, it's non-bulk. And so they've modified that definition. They've added a definition for absorbed gases and also some new entries. Lithium batteries, lithium batteries, lithium batteries. This HM215M also focusing on the lithium batteries and aligning section 173, 185 with IATA packing instructions 965, 968, section 1B. They also now authorize us to use the cargo aircraft only label. We were having to write on the package, primary lithium metal batteries prohibited for transport on passenger airplane. Well, now we can just use the cargo aircraft only label. Also, they removed packing group 2 from the hazardous materials table, and you can no longer put packing group 2 on the shipper's declaration. If you're shipping a fully regulated class 9 material, lithium battery, it requires a box that meets the packing group 2 performance level. However, if you look in the hazardous materials table, it doesn't show the packing group. It's because a battery is an article, and therefore the packing group is not required to be shown on the shipper's declaration. There have been several new entries for marine pollutants added to Appendix B, right behind the hazardous materials table. However, we've also adopted, as the other regulations have as well, the 5 liter, 5 kilo rule, meaning a marine pollutant in a package less than 5 liters or 5 kilos is not regulated by any mode. And that means you can have a box with 10 bottles, 10 4-liter bottles inside that box. So the total is 40 liters or 40 kilos, and it's still not regulated. So it doesn't matter whether it's the inner packaging or single packaging, 5 liters or 5 kilos, it's not regulated. They've revised the proper shipping names for airbag inflators, and seatbelt retentioners. They're now called safety devices. They have safety devices electronically or safety devices pyrotechnically as appropriate. They've adjusted the standards for UN specification markings for IBCs and large packagings. And the marks on overpacks, and again, this is across the board, all 3 regulations, that the overpack marking must be 12 millimeters high. And they've 49 CFR, we've added vessel stowage codes in column 10B and section 176.83 to standardize with the IMDG code. If you've been using limited quantity marks and putting the UN number on that limited quantity mark, it's no longer allowed as of January 1st this year. The limited quantity mark must be just like the one in 49 CFR, section 173.315. Of course, by ground or ocean, that limited quantity mark is black and white. That limited quantity mark for transport by air has to have a Y in it. Some other final rules that came down in 2015 had to do with enhanced tank car standards for large quantities of flammable liquids, editorial corrections on section 173-185, again for lithium batteries, and for special permits. A special permit is getting special permission from the DOT. If you wanted to operate outside of 49 CFR, you're asking for an exception. Well, those procedures and the application process have been revamped. And lastly, the DOT put out an advisory notice saying that they do not want e-cigarettes in checked baggage. Yes, e-cigarettes have lithium batteries. Here's some leftovers from 2014. I'm amazed that this continues to be an issue. It never should have been an issue. It was a non-issue from the very beginning. You can see that our old Class 9 label had a very fine, thin, horizontal line going across the middle from left to right. We came out with a new label to make it standardized with the rest of the world with no horizontal line connecting the top and bottom of the label. But it shouldn't have been a big deal, should not be a big deal today, because both 49 CFR and IATA say it's no big deal. 49 CFR says the horizontal line is optional. IATA says we can have minor variations as long as we don't take away from the meaning of the label. So either one of those should be acceptable. Also, HM215K from 2014 eliminating the ORMD classification. We know it's being replaced by the limited quantity mark as shown here. We've already eliminated the ORMD Air as of December 31st, 2012, and they've given us until December 31st, 2020 to use or utilize ORMD by ground in the United States. Almost everybody's getting on board, or let's just say a majority of the industry has already gotten on board with the new requirement and now accepting the limited quantity mark only. For IMDG, I like this book. It comes out every 2 years, comes out at the end of the even year, and it says, hey, here's the new book for the next couple years. The odd year, in this case 2015, is the transition year, but come January 1st, 2016, everything's going to be mandatory. And this process repeats itself every year. So at the end of this year, we'll get a new book for 2017, 2018, and 2017 will be our transition year. And at the end of 2017, January 1st, 2018, it's going to be mandatory. There's a look at both the limited quantity marks. By air, has to have the Y. The one without the Y was designed for ground and ocean. However, for ground and ocean, they take either one. The IMDG comes in 2 volumes, parts 1 through 7, and I've laid out these changes through numerically, parts 1 through 7. Part 1 here starts with general provisions and definitions, and they added some entries for lamps containing dangerous goods. This was a big deal when they came out with these long-lasting light bulbs, some of them containing mercury, argon, other gases, and people wanted to restrict them in transportation. They've clarified this, saying these lamps are not a big deal as long as they don't contain more than this many milligrams of these gases. So you can see that in Special Provision 366. They're also making an effort to get rid of containers, unit load devices that are unsafe and unstable. They've also come out with a requirement. They came out with it in the middle of the year, saying that it's going to be mandatory, I believe July of this year, and we're going to have to verify the container weights. So they're cracking down on the containers, both the condition of them and the actual weights of them. They've also added definitions for exclusive use, freight containers, and GHS. GHS being one of the keys, and we'll talk about that later with the IATA regulations, because they actually put in, they added a paragraph discussing GHS and actually clarifying that just because a material or a package has the GHS pictogram label on it does not mean that it's regulated in transportation. They're apples and oranges, and I've actually added an article on our blog at dgitraining.com, and I've explained the differences of GHS and transportation. They've made some changes to the classification of substances, mixtures, and solutions with multiple hazards. This has to do with the precedence of hazards table. Many dangerous goods meet the definition of more than one hazard class, and the precedence of hazard table helps us determine which is the primary and which is the subsidiary. They talked about the assignment of a packing group for a class 3 material with a flash point less than 23 degrees Celsius. Normally that would fall within the packing group 1 criteria, but they make an exception for viscous liquids or very thick liquids. Liquids having a thick viscosity, if you will. Definitions and specific terms for Class 7 radioactive material, and also amendments to Class 9 miscellaneous, specifically lithium batteries. The lithium battery industry is evolving by leaps and bounds, and it's no surprise that you guys may have seen that Amazon.com, FedEx, and others refuse to ship these hoverboards because the batteries explode. And so it continues to evolve into an incredible industry, and as it evolves, we're having to massage the regulations across the board to accommodate all of these different types of lithium batteries, but keeping us safe at the same time. For marine pollutants, I showed you in 49 CFR, less than 5 kilos or 5 liters, it's not regulated. There's also some issues with proper shipping names for marine pollutants, when using NOS entries. Ladies and gentlemen, a marine pollutant that does not meet the definition of any of the other hazard classes is assigned the appropriate proper shipping name of environmentally hazardous substances, NOS. Now, if you have this type of material, you're going to be required to put the technical name of the marine pollutant in parentheses in association with that environmentally hazardous substance proper shipping name. If you're shipping a flammable liquid, for example, and it's also a marine pollutant, then you would write the proper shipping name UN 1993 flammable liquid NOS class 3 packing group 2, and you would add the words marine pollutant. Because it meets the definition of one of the other hazard classes, there's no need to put the technical name for the marine pollutant. But this is causing some confusion, and you may be challenged whether or not your marine pollutant meets the definition of another hazard class. So be prepared for that. They've also added some segregation and stowage group categories, columns 16A and 16B. And because they've added these stowage and segregation codes in 16A and 16B, there's been what they call consequential changes to pretty much many other areas of the regulations. Here is an excerpt from the IMDG code highlighting these segregation and stowage codes in column 16A and 16B. All kinds of changes to the dangerous goods list for various UN numbers and to a whole bunch of special provisions. Now, there's no way I can go through all these special provisions, but if you use any one of these special provisions on a regular basis, then you need to revisit and find out whether or not these changes are going to affect your product, your package, your shipment. And again, here's some of those consequential changes that have affected limited quantities and accepted quantities because of the segregation code requirements, or added segregation codes in 16A, 16B. And just like 49 CFR, they've added some UN numbers, 3510 through 3518. Appendix B has been updated with some glossary terms, changes, and amendments. And if there's new UN numbers, they're going to be added to the alphabetical list as well. Section 4 has to do with the packaging requirements, packaging instructions, if you will. And again, I can't go through all of them, but if you use any one of these, you need to check them out and make sure they don't affect your shipment, your package. Revisions to intermediate bulk instructions, IBC 02, 04, 05, 06, and 100. Again, if you use them, follow up and see what the changes are. Also across the board, these the overpack marking requirement is 12 millimeters high. It's standard. That's the standard marking requirement for the UN specification marking. Proper shipping name and UN number for the shipper's marking requirement, unless that package is less than 30 kilos or 30 liters, at which point the proper shipping name and UN marking requirement for the shipper can be reduced to 6 millimeters. They say amendment to the marine pollutant mark with minimum dimensions of 100 by 100, but they still make an exception. If the package isn't large enough, it can be reduced 50%. And if it's going to be on the outside of a cargo container, it's got to be 250 millimeters by 250 millimeters. Section 5 is the consignment procedures, the communications requirements, i.e. marking, labeling, and documentation For portable tanks with capacities less than 3,000 pounds, they're saying that you can now label or placard on 2 opposite sides rather than placarding on all 4. Revisions to the marine pollutant marking requirement are the same. They're saying now that if you're shipping solid dangerous goods in bulk cargo transport units, that you have to now indicate that on the shipper's declaration. They say that they've updated this label that you have to put on the outside of a cargo transport unit if it's been fumigated. It was updated at the beginning of 2015. Again, if you've seen it, then that's what it is. But you have to mark the outside of the cargo transport unit that this unit is under fumigation. The same thing applies if you use dry ice, coolants, or other asphyxiants in a closed cargo transport unit, that you have to put a label on the outside saying that this unit contained dry ice or whatever that other material might have been. Here's what I was talking about with the container weight verification. In addition to getting rid of the old rusty containers that are not serviceable, we now have to verify the container weight once it's loaded. And there's 2 ways we can do this. We can actually weigh everything that goes on the inside of the container and then take the weight from the data plate on the outside of the container and add them all together and present that with the shipment. Or you can use the empty weight or the tariff weight of the container, have it weighed at a truck scale, bring it to your location, fill it up, bring it back and get the gross weight and use that documentation with your shipment. This is going to be effective July 1st, 2016, and it will be enforced. Estimating the weight of the container is not permitted, and the party packing the container cannot use somebody else's weights that were provided. Whoever's packing that container has to verify that weight, either by weighing everything that goes on the inside with the empty weight of the container, or you take the whole thing to a truck scale before and after it's loaded. Part 6 is the UN specification packaging requirements. And here they've made a number of different changes, a lot of them to small aerosol or pressure receptacles, and markings of bundles of cylinders, as well as multiple element gas containers, or cylinders they say are manifolded together, more than one cylinder connected. Section 7 is the segregation and stowage section. That's where we'll find our segregation table, stowage tables, and all of those requirements. And because they've added 16A and 16B, of course, this section has been revamped. So if we look in 16A or 16B, we'll see the stowage and segregation codes. Then it tells us we have to go to section 7 and look up what that code is and exactly what the segregation is or exactly what the stowage requirements are. Lastly, we're going to talk about IATA, and here they too have released a couple of documents in the middle of the year, if you will. One of them, shipping cargo lithium batteries in 2016. They just released a few days ago. I'll show you how to get there via our website. I posted it on our website, but that's going to be effective April 1st, and we'll talk about that here shortly. The first thing they did in section 1 is that they added this new definition about consolidations. They've always had this definition on consolidations, and they always said that consolidations were not acceptable. But that's what freight forwarders do. They take freight from hundreds of different people and they consolidate them into one shipment, and then they present it to the airline. Well, the airlines don't like it, and what their new definition says is your definition of a consolidation may not be exactly what ours is, and of course they reserve the right to refuse service to anybody. So if they don't like your consolidation, they're not going to take it. And here's the blurb on GHS requirements. That's what these pictograms look like. And once again, just because your package has a GHS pictogram does not mean that it's regulated in transportation. It does not mean it's regulated in transportation. Many people have a hard time splitting the difference here. GHS requirements regulate dangerous goods in the workplace. It does not regulate them in transportation. 49 CFR regulates dangerous goods in transportation. IATA regulates dangerous goods in transportation. The IMDG code regulates dangerous goods in transportation, not GHS. And again, I've written an article. It's on our homepage. If you go to our homepage, go to blog, pull down the blog menu, and you can find this article, Global Harmonization Systems and Transportation. I also left over some items from 2014. This in section 2.3, dangerous goods carried by passengers and crew. Because it addresses lithium batteries, I left it here. They made clear distinctions between medical devices and personal electronic devices. For medical devices carried on board, they'll allow you to carry on batteries controlling these equipment or operating equipment up to 160 watt-hours. As opposed to personal electronic devices, they only allow those lithium-ion rechargeable batteries to contain no more than 100 watt-hours. And all of them must be UN approved. If you're not familiar with state and operator variations and you use the IATA regulations, you need to become familiar with them. They may very well determine whether or not your material is going to be shipped or not. If you ship to France, Nepal, or Venezuela, you want to check out their variations because they've changed theirs or added some new things. And there have been numerous changes with the operator variations, many of them having to do with lithium batteries. If you plan on shipping lithium batteries on passenger airplanes, you better check out the airline that you're using and look at their operator variations. Section 4.2 is the blue pages, the list of dangerous goods, and just like 49 CFR and the IMDG code, they've added some new UN numbers, 3510 through 3526. 9 of them are general NOS entries, and the remainder are named substances. We also talked about removing packing group 2 from the shipper's declaration as it applies to lithium batteries and other articles. If you're shipping an article, the packing group is not required, even though the packing instruction may require the package meet the packing group 2 performance level. Proper shipping names for airbag inflators, airbag modules, seatbelt pretensioners is now safety devices pyrotechnic or safety devices electrically initiated. In this year's IATA book, for electrically initiated, only safety devices are in bold print. Electrically initiated is not in bold print. However, I think that if you're shipping them, the carrier will want to see electrically initiated included with the proper shipping name. But check with the carrier. Remaining in the blue pages, all references to the capital G have pretty much been deleted. It is still there for consumer commodity, limited quantity. Mercury has a new toxic subrisk, and mercury contained in manufactured articles has a new UN number, 3506. Remaining in the blue pages, UN number 3090, lithium metal batteries, has been amended to show forbidden across the board. Lithium metal batteries are forbidden for transport on passenger aircraft. Up until this point, it was just the United States, right? Well, now IATA and ICAO have adopted lithium metal batteries are prohibited for transport on passenger airplane. This does not apply to lithium metal batteries contained in equipment or packed with equipment, as long as those batteries do not exceed 5 kilos. Special provision A192 has to do with paint-related material and ink-related material. Up until this point, if you were shipping UN 1263 paint, UN 1263 paint-related material, you had to write them twice. You had to write them twice on the shipper's declaration. You had to write them twice on the package, mark it on the package. With this special provision, we can now use paint-related material and write it once. And the same applies to ink and ink-related material. A197 again has to do with marine pollutants, less than 5 liters or less than 5 kilos. It's not regulated. Here, A197 talks about environmentally hazardous substances. Well, is this all environmentally hazardous substances, or is it only marine pollutants? If you go back and look, it refers to section 2.9.10, and if you go back and read that, it talks about environmentally hazardous substance, and then it puts in parentheses aquatic environment. So in my professional opinion, they're referring specifically to marine pollutants. This may become a point of discussion as we go on, and this may be clarified by the end of the year. If you're talking about other environmentally hazardous substances, these are materials that could be a danger to our air and or to our soil or the environment in other ways. And that's why I think that it's discussing specifically for marine pollutants. Getting into the yellow pages, section 5, we don't like dangerous goods in these LD3 containers, in these cargo containers, which are then loaded onto the airplane. If we put dangerous goods in there, if there's an accident or incident, we can't get access to them because they're locked up into the container. Section 5, overpacks. This first bullet there, again, leftovers from 2014, 2015. There used to be a paragraph right there in the beginning of Section 5 that said we could not have an overpack. It also had the cargo aircraft only label unless there was only one package in the overpack, or it was a class 3 packing group 3, blah, blah, blah. Fortunately, they removed that whole paragraph, and there are no further restrictions on our overpacks. The overpack marking must be 12 millimeters high, and yes, of course, we can have non-dangerous goods and dangerous goods in the same overpack. There used to be a chart that had filling limits for a bunch of different gases in the beginning of Section 5 that has been moved to Pack Instruction 200. They've now included which classes and packing groups may be reclassed as a consumer commodity ID 8000. You just can't take whatever you're shipping and say, whoa, I'm going to make this a consumer commodity ID 8000 and then try to take advantage of the exceptions that it has. Only certain classes and packing groups are authorized to be reclassified as a consumer commodity ID 8000. We can now see those authorized classes and packing groups in packing instruction Y963 as well as special provision A112. Staying with the yellow pages and the packing instructions, these next couple of slides address the continuing evolution of these lithium batteries and how they're shipped. And governments and industry struggle to work on the same page to regulate these materials to keep them safe, but not to hinder the transportation of them. They're saying here that we've added text to packing instruction 965 to indicate that the outer packagings have to be rigid, and they tell us what they are: wooden boxes, fiberboard drums, etc. The same changes have been added packing instructions 966 through 970, 966 and 969. So if you're shipping lithium batteries, you need the new regulations and you need to stay up on the changes. And I told you about this lithium battery guidance document that they just released the other day. Let me see if I can get away and show you that document now. Here's where they're talking about limiting the exception from the application of lithium battery handling label. As it is right now, they're saying that if you have a small lithium battery and you have less than 4 cells or 2 batteries contained in the equipment or packed with the equipment in one box, then it's not regulated. Well, there's been conflict back and forth. Well, we have 100 of these boxes on one pallet, and the pallet constitutes an overpack. Well, the requirement is it's per package, not per overpack. Therefore, we could have 100 of these boxes on a pallet and it's still not regulated. Well, what this document is going to do now is limit those small exceptions to 2 packages per shipment. And therefore, if you have more than that, it's going to be regulated. And here's the outline of that document. The 25th meeting of the ICAO Dangerous Goods Panel. They met in October of 2015 and they came up with these recommended changes. One of them I just told you about. The other one is they want to eliminate Section 2 for packing instruction 965, 968. Lastly, and I believe this will be incorporated, is that they're going to restrict the transportation of lithium batteries based on what they call a state of charge. The reason the lithium batteries are a risk or unsafe is because they have what's called thermal runaway. And what they've determined is, the thermal runaway is that it just starts getting hotter and hotter and hotter until it catches itself on fire. And what they've determined is that this thermal runaway can be somewhat controlled if the battery is not charged more than 30%. And now they're going to say that we're going to have to make sure that the batteries are not charged more than 30%. So look for other devices to hit the market to determine what your percent of charge is when you ship your lithium battery. And as I say at the top of this slide, ICAO is supposed to meet again this month and tell us whether or not they're going to accept these recommended changes from the Dangerous Goods Panel. But IATA didn't wait. IATA didn't wait. Just the other day, just this week, they published Lithium Battery Guidance Document 2016. Let me show you how easy it is to get to this document. We just posted it on our website. So if you go to our website, and I think you can follow along here on the screen, if you go to our website, dgitraining.com, And on the right-hand side of the screen, we have DGI Daily Ground, DGI Daily Ocean, and DGI Daily Air. So if you click on DGI Daily Air, there we have the changes. And you see just this week, IATA issues Lithium Battery Guidance 2016. And there in it, you're going to see that they're coming up with these recommended shipping documents, shipping guidance for the lithium batteries in 2016. So it's on our website, and you can see what these recommendations are, and they're going to incorporate this starting, I believe, July. What was the last one? Last one was July. This is going to be April 2016. But we're waiting to see what ICAO announces, and it's going to be interesting to see what IATA does, having just released this this lithium battery guidance document this week. So we'll see how that plays out, and we're going to keep you posted on how it plays out. Now moving into section 7, they also, just like the other two regulations, make it mandatory that the overpack marking must be 12 millimeters high. In section 8, documentation, we used to say 4 fiberboard boxes times 1 kilo. We can now write out everything. We don't have to use numbered digits. 4 fiberboard boxes, F-O-U-R, 4 fiberboard boxes times 1 kilo, O-N-E. Again, these GHS requirements, if anybody challenges you and says that, no, GHS means it's regulated and we have to have a shipper's declaration, they need some training, first of all, but second of all, you can point out this section to them where it explains, no, GHS is not transportation. This is also leftovers from 2014. If you're still using that cargo aircraft only label that says danger, get rid of it. It's no longer valid. Section 10, if you ship radioactive material, the text on the requirement for packages must bear the permissible gross weight has been clarified. The appendices in the back of IATA are very useful, a lot of useful information in there. If you don't know, Appendix H, that has the expected changes coming down for next year. So already in this year's book, you can look in Appendix H and see what they're planning on for 2017. Appendix A is the glossary section, and of course, just like the IMDG, they continue to massage these definitions for lithium batteries and lithium cells. And if you don't know by now, and I'm sure you do, DGI offers webinars for both accepted batteries as well as fully regulated batteries. We also have a really smart guy that works for us. He writes computer programs for us, and he came up with this thing called the Battery Wizard, the Lithium Battery Wizard. He asks you 5 questions, and we'll put you on the appropriate packing instruction with all of the requirements. A reminder that articles on the blog, as well as many different articles on current issues as they affect the transportation of dangerous goods. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been great. I appreciate your business. DGI appreciates your business. And we look forward to this every year. And we'll do the same for next year. Thanks for keeping us honest, and we appreciate it very much. You have my name and telephone number on the inside front cover, as well as my email address on the inside front cover of every DGI workbook. Let us know if we can help. Thank you very much.